5 years. That's how long he tried to be everything for her, her support, her inspiration, her quiet background when she wanted the spotlight. He wore himself down to near invisibility, hoping she'd see him, just once. But all he saw was the shadow of her ex in her words and the coldness in her eyes. Until one phrase changed everything. Not a scream, not a fight, just a calm, okay. That was the beginning of the end. Not explosive, but icy. Where most men stay silent and swallow the pain, he chose a different path. And now, she texts, calls, likes his posts. But him, he's already too far gone. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. Olivia and I had been married for 5 years. 5 long years of effort, compromise, and the constant struggle to reignite the spark we once held dear. Yet, nothing I did ever seemed to be enough for her. It hadn't always been this way. In the beginning, everything felt surreal, like something out of a beautiful daydream. We were inseparable, lost in each other, intoxicated by the novelty and intensity of what we were building. We'd stay awake until sunrise, whispering our dreams, our fears, the tiny truths that made us feel truly seen. The way she looked at me back then, it was like I was her whole world. And for a while, I believed I actually was. For a long time, I thought our bond was unbreakable. But slowly, and almost without notice, things began to shift. It started with little things, tiny jabs, casual comments about how I did this or that. At first, I laughed them off, thinking she was just teasing. "You're really going to wear that?" she'd say, smirking. "That's how you wash dishes? My dad would have had a fit." I'd chuckle, play along, assume she meant no harm. But those small remarks grew sharper, the tone less playful, the humor eventually gone. Then the comparisons began. Other men, her friends' partners, her father, and worst of all, the one person I never wanted brought into our marriage, her ex. At first it was barely noticeable, folded into conversations without much weight. Benjamin used to plan the most thoughtful dates. He always made me feel special. I tried not to let it bother me, told myself it was just a passing memory. But then it escalated. Benjamin could fix anything around the house. Benjamin never forgot anniversaries. He always did something creative. Benjamin. Again and again. Benjamin. I'd never even seen the man, but I hated him. Not for who he was, but for the ghost Olivia kept inviting into our lives. I started questioning myself. Was I not enough? Was I failing her? So I tried harder. I arranged date nights even when I was dead tired from work. I fixed things around the house just to prove I could be useful too. I shaped myself into the image of the husband she said she wanted, desperately hoping she'd see me again like she used to. But it didn't change anything. Nothing I did ever made a difference. And what hurt the most was that she never seemed to notice. The more I tried, the more she pulled away. Her words grew colder, her presence more distant, and soon I barely recognized my own life. It was like I was a guest in it. Still, I held on. I told myself every marriage goes through rough seasons. I believed she'd eventually see the depth of my love and maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. Then came the night everything broke. We were arguing again. I don't even remember what started it. Maybe I forgot something. Maybe I said something wrong. Like always, it escalated, fast and personal. She stood there, arms crossed, her anger practically vibrating off her skin. "You never take initiative, Peter. You just let life happen to you. Honestly, my ex was more of a man than you'll ever be." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't move. Over the years, she'd said plenty of cruel things. But this was different. I looked at her, really looked, and all I saw was someone who no longer respected me, someone who didn't appreciate what I gave, who had already decided I wasn't enough and never would be. Something inside me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue. There was no point anymore. I took a breath, deep and heavy, feeling everything sink in. "Okay," I said quietly, calmly. She tilted her head. "That's it? Okay?" I didn't respond. I turned and walked to the bedroom. Behind me, I heard her scoff. "Figures. Walk away, just like always." But I wasn't walking away. I was making a decision. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about everything I had poured into this marriage, my devotion, my time, my love, and what I got in return: rejection, criticism, silence. I saw, finally, that I couldn't keep giving everything to someone who refused to see me. The next morning, I left without a word. No goodbye, no note, just the quiet departure of a man who had nothing left to offer. I drove straight to my lawyer's office and started the divorce process. I was calm, clear. There was no hesitation. As I signed the paperwork, I didn't feel anger or grief, just a simple, honest understanding. This marriage had ended long before that moment. In the days that followed, until everything was finalized, I moved through the house like she wasn't even there. I didn't greet her, didn't ask how she was, didn't meet her eyes longer than necessary. The book had already closed. Olivia lay stretched out on the sofa, her attention glued to her phone. Usually, the moment I stepped inside, she'd fire off a biting remark or some passive-aggressive jab just to set the tone. But tonight, silence. Not a word. I could sense her eyes tracking me, anticipating a reaction, a complaint, a sigh, a retort, anything. This was our standard dance. She'd provoke, I'd rise to it, and then somehow I'd end up apologizing, trying to smooth things over. But not tonight. I poured myself a drink, settled into the armchair across from her, and turned on the TV. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her casting quick glances my way, fishing for a response. I gave her none. Eventually, she huffed dramatically, mumbled something under her breath, and disappeared into the bedroom. Perfect. Let her sit with that. I made a conscious decision to erase her from my radar. I started staying out later, coming and going without explanation. I stopped answering her messages, no longer told her where I was headed, and ignored her completely. I didn't acknowledge her sarcasm or engage in her petty games. I let go of the role I'd played for so long, the desperate husband chasing scraps of attention. At first, she acted unbothered. She'd scoff and mutter things like, "So now you're giving me the cold shoulder?" Like I was just throwing a tantrum. But after a while, she started to realize something had shifted. This wasn't a mood swing. It was a full-scale withdrawal. One night, I wandered in after midnight. I hadn't gone anywhere meaningful, just stayed out because I felt like it. When I walked in, she was there waiting, arms folded, posture rigid. "Where the hell have you been?" she barked. Without looking at her, I kicked off my shoes. "Out." "Out where?" she pressed. "Does it matter?" I said, as I moved toward the kitchen. "You really just don't care anymore, do you?" I tossed my keys onto the counter. "Nope." She blinked, startled. "Just like that?" I shrugged casually. "Just like that." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "Wow. So that's how this ends." Leaning against the counter, I met her stare. "What did you expect, Olivia? You belittled me, called me inadequate, treated me like I was in your way. So why should I still care?" For a split second, something cracked in her expression, a flicker of realization, like she finally saw the line she'd crossed. But she buried it quickly, straightened up, and scoffed again. "Fine," she said flatly. "I want a divorce." I smiled, already in motion. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I filed the morning after our last blowout, I said, voice calm. Should be finalized soon. You'll need to move out, she said automatically, like trying to regain control. Her eyes scanned my face, searching for a bluff. You're lying. Nope, I said again. And just like that, she had no comeback, no jab, no sarcasm, nothing. She stood there, stunned. 2 days later, she was gone. I braced myself for chaos, a drawn-out war, some vindictive backlash. But it never came. She quietly packed her things, boxed up her life, and left without saying a word. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I felt like a man finally breathing fresh air after years in a sealed room. For the first time in ages, I didn't have to endure the constant judgment, the emotional distance, or the feeling of being second-rate to someone who barely saw my worth. The pressure lifted. Olivia didn't waste time moving on. Within a month, the updates started trickling in. Friends casually mentioned she was out and about, dating new guys, flooding social media with photos, fancy dinners, trendy bars, picture-perfect smiles. She looked like she was living a dream life. I wasn't checking in, but people love to talk, especially when drama might be brewing. She seems like she's doing great, someone said to me once. I shrugged. Good for her. And I meant it. She got what she wanted. Total freedom. No one holding her back. But freedom isn't always what people imagine it to be. At first, her life looked like everything she'd hoped for. But slowly, the stories began to shift. The dating scene wasn't quite the fantasy she'd envisioned. The men she met weren't like me. They didn't have patience. They didn't commit. Some ghosted her after a few dates. Others stuck around for superficial reasons. And the few that lingered weren't offering the fairy tale she believed was just waiting for her once I was out of the picture. For years, she convinced herself I was the barrier between her and something better. But now, reality was teaching her otherwise. One day, our mutual friend Amelia brought it up over drinks. She says dating's not what it used to be, she said, swirling the ice in her glass. I chuckled. Is that so? She says guys don't treat women the same anymore. That made me laugh harder. Olivia had assumed everything I gave, the effort, the steadiness, the care, was a given. She thought finding someone who would treat her the same way would be easy. But she was learning now. Most men wouldn't put up with her attitude, her sense of entitlement, or the way she avoided owning her faults. She was always the type to deflect blame. In her story, she was never the problem. It always played out the same way. Someone else was supposed to fill my shoes. She walked out certain I could be replaced with ease, convinced that finding someone better was just a decision away. What she never realized was that the issue had never been me. It had always been her. And over time, that confident glow she carried with her new, polished life began to fade. The constant party photos stopped appearing. The once daily updates to her social feeds dwindled, quieter and more infrequent. The excitement she'd chased had dulled. The spark had gone out. Because in the end, all she was left with was the exact thing she'd pursued. Nothing. The divorce, surprisingly, went through without any hurdles. Maybe neither of us had the will to stretch out what had already fallen apart. Or maybe, deep down, Olivia knew she had finally driven me past the point of no return. Whatever the truth, she didn't fight. She signed the papers with barely more than a glance, and within a few short months, everything was finalized. Just like that, we were strangers once more. There were no bitter court arguments, no shouting over who got what. I stayed in the house, and she quietly packed and walked away. It was cleaner than I ever could have imagined, and truthfully, I didn't waste any time mourning something that had been lifeless for years. I redirected everything into my career, the focus I once divided between my job and trying to please someone who never truly appreciated it. The payoff was immediate: promotions, new doors opening, success I'd been too tied down to chase before. And most importantly, I never looked back. Then, without warning, The first message came in. Hey, how have you been? I ignored it. A few days later, another popped up. You crossed my mind today. Hope you're doing well. But I knew what was happening. I recognized the signs. She had spent months chasing the life she thought she needed. Freedom, attention, a constant thrill, only to find herself staring into a void. Now she was drifting back toward what she once discarded. Comfort, security, me. Still, I stayed silent. Then the small online gestures started appearing. A seemingly innocent-looking good comment on a travel post, a fire emoji under a gym selfie, calculated, subtle, quietly begging for notice. She was trying to be seen, hoping I'd acknowledge her, but I didn't bite. Then came the direct approach. Late one night, my phone lit up. Her name. I nearly let it go unanswered. Nearly. But curiosity won. Hello? There was a pause, then her voice, softer than I remembered. I miss you. I leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. No, you don't, I replied. A nervous laugh. I do. I was just thinking about everything we went through. I cut in. And yet, you still believed there was something better waiting out there. She fell silent. Then a faint sigh. I don't know. I feel like we ended it too fast. I almost laughed. Too fast? Olivia, you were the one who left. That was your choice. Another long pause. I'm not looking for a fight, she whispered. I just wanted to talk. I nodded to myself. Well, I said, we talked. Then I hung up. That was the last time I picked up when she called. She reached out again in the weeks that followed. More messages, longer this time. Apologies wrapped in hesitation. Words dipped in remorse, loaded with what-ifs, dreams of a different life, where maybe things turned out another way. I read them, but I never wrote back. Because while she sat quietly in the aftermath of the life she'd chosen, finally realizing no one was coming to rescue her from it, I was already too far gone to care. This story has come to an end. Sometimes love isn't about fighting for someone's attention. It's about knowing when to let go of the one who stopped valuing you. No matter how much you give, if someone looks right through you, it's pointless. Respect, care, and kindness should never be a one-way street. Self-worth begins the moment you stop begging for scraps of affection. Don't be afraid to walk away when you're only being held by habit and the expectation that you'll endure anything. Because by leaving, you're not losing, you're reclaiming yourself. And sometimes, that's the only real way to start living. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.